and welcome everybody. It's nice to be hosting all of you again. And I think it's a great time to be doing it as the UN gathers for its General Assembly. I think it's a perfect time to be together to talk about opportunities, to highlight growth opportunities in the African region. It's, as I'll mention in a minute, excuse me, it's something I'm hearing more and more about in the conversations I have with CEOs. I'm also pleased to report that in the time we've become friends with Hubert and his team and that we've been hosting these events here at the Exchange, our own relationships in Africa have been getting broader and deeper. We now list 16 companies here on NYSE Euronext from 8 different countries. Their total market cap exceeds $100 billion, and the liquidity in those stocks has grown nearly 20-fold in the last decade. We've also got 12 African-focused ETFs that are listed here, which overall manage assets of more than $1 billion, and that's twice the value that it was 5 years ago when we held the first Africa Day here at the NYSE. We provide technology to 3 exchanges in the region, Casablanca, Tunis, and Gabon. And we've also been honored to host several leaders from a number of different African countries here the last several years, including the presidents of Ethiopia, Liberia, Mozambique, South Africa, and Tanzania. Last October, our president, Dominique Cerruti, led a delegation of our team to the World Federation of Exchanges annual meeting, which was held in Johannesburg. So we continue to try to be an actively engaged partner with the continent in any way that we possibly can be helpful. Shifting gears a little bit, I also think it's a great time to be together because the economies of Africa are, I think, among the most exciting and growth-oriented in the world right now. I have the luxury in my position of, on almost a daily basis, having either phone conversations or in-person conversations with CEOs from around the world, and I always ask them, where are you seeing opportunities? Where are you pulling back? Where are you investing? Where are you disinvesting? Where do you think the near and midterm opportunities are? And a year ago, if I had been standing in front of you, we weren't hearing much about Africa in those conversations. Now I can tell you in virtually every conversation, CEOs are telling me, I see a lot of opportunities in Africa. So they are busy traveling there a lot more, spending a lot more time there, trying to figure out how to make sensible investments in the region. Now, why are they doing that? Probably because they believe what many of you believe. If you look at the IMF statistics, between now and 2015, they expect that African countries will account for 7 of the 10 fastest growing economies in the world. If you look at just 2012, it looks like the overall growth rate for the continent will come in at about 5%. That compares very favorably to the 3.5% that we expect the average to be in the rest of the world. And from our vantage point, we have a lot of confidence that this growth is going to continue as we see an increasing opportunity for the development of an African middle class. Why do we think that's important? It's the same thing we would say about any developed or emerging economy. If you can create underlying domestic demand from consumers, that effectively creates the foundation for entrepreneurship and the development of what we would call small businesses. Now, small businesses mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. When I talk about SMEs all the time in my job, I have to explain to people that includes every Main Street business in America, and the average number of employees at those companies is less than 10. So we're not talking about multi-$100-million companies necessarily, although that might be in the SME, the bigger net of SMEs. We're talking about, for an economy to thrive, the small business engine is the job creation engine. If you can see that consumer demand that will come naturally with the development of a middle class in Africa, we'd be very optimistic that that will create that foundation for entrepreneurs to flourish. Now, the other thing that's going to happen is it will be very important for the governments in those countries to make sure that they are doing all the things to facilitate what those small businesses will need. And the oxygen they will need, in our opinion, is simply stated access to capital. Now, we may all shake our heads and go, well, that's pretty obvious. Yes, it is pretty obvious. And yet, in most economies in the world right now, if you ask the SME community, what's your biggest challenge, they would say getting access to affordably priced capital. So we are doing a number of things here with our advocacy platform. We were a proud co-author of the Jobs Act, and particularly the piece that is the IPO on-ramp piece of it that helps companies who are smaller get access to the capital market since traditional funding sources are not available to them as they have been in the past. And we're very proud to see the early results of what that bill has already meant. And secondarily, with more of a Main Street focus for the real small businesses in this country, we're working on something we call the Big Startup, where big companies that are in our issuer community work with us, and we help give not necessarily money to small businesses, although we are involved in some microfinance efforts, but it's also about expertise where big companies can share with small companies how to be more successful, what things to do around the edges to make that small business be a more successful small business. So I think we'll be encouraging some of the leadership in the African countries to steal a few pages from those books and really make sure that you'll have the good fortune of the demand naturally creating these opportunities, make sure that the government does its part in terms of helping with capital formation. So we come here today pretty optimistic. I think we believe that what will work is for people like you to continue to gather, share your ideas with each other, as Hubert talked about, network here, but then network outside of this group to make sure that these issues are raised. And I'd be very optimistic, given that we've done this several times now, if we continue to collaborate, if we use opportunities like this to share best practices and learn from one another, I'd be very confident that you can plant the seeds for future success tomorrow.
Doing business in Africa, you can't afford to be without Africa Investor.